Solving Simultaneous Equations Graphically with adamonlinetutoring. Here is the beginner question involving two linear equations. We need to use the graph to solve the simultaneous equations. We could solve these algebraically using methods shown in the previous videos, but because this question specifically asks to use the graph, you'll lose marks if you do it any other way, such as algebraically. We can plot the equations of these lines using a couple of different methods, but the easiest and most applicable to all questions, including some more difficult ones, is to use a table of values to find some corresponding coordinates. You can pick whichever x values you like, but try to stay around the origin, 0, 0, as numbers too far away from here may result in y values that you're unable to plot because the graph space that they've given you might not be big enough. So it could fall outside the range and be something like 10, 11 or 12, which we won't be able to plot. And always make sure you do at least 3 points, just in case you get one of them wrong. It will be a little bit easier to spot that with 3 as opposed to 2 points. So for the first equation, we have y equals x plus 2. If x is negative 1, we can substitute that into the equation. So y would be equal to negative 1 plus 2, which is 1. Next, we can substitute 0. 0 plus 2 is 2. And lastly, we can substitute x is 1, and 1 plus 2 is equal to 3. We can now find the corresponding coordinates. If x is negative 1 and y is 1, that would be the coordinate negative 1, 1. Next would be 0, 2. And lastly, we've got 1, 3. Plot these coordinates on the graph, starting with negative 1, 1, which would go here. The next one, 0, 2, here. And lastly, 1, 3 would go here. Use a ruler and a pencil to draw a straight line all the way through your points from one end of the graph to the other. And then repeat the process for the second equation, 2x plus 5. So when x is negative 1, 2 lots of negative 1 is negative 2 plus 5, which is 3. When x is 0, we have 2 lots of 0 is 0 plus 5 is 5. And lastly, when x is 1, we have 2 lots of 1 is 2, plus 5 is equal to 7. Write down the corresponding coordinates and plot, and again, connect all the way through using a ruler and pencil. And the solutions to your simultaneous equations will be where these straight lines intersect or cross. We can see that they cross here, so we just need to find out what the corresponding x and y value is for that coordinate or that point. So the coordinate is negative 3 and the y value is negative 1. So therefore x equals negative 3 and y equals negative 1. On to the intermediate question with a slight increase in difficulty. This is most similar to the types of questions that you're likely to see in an exam. Notice how the first equation is given in the same format as the one that we had previously. Y equals mx plus c, or half x plus 2. So we can go ahead and do this in the same way that we did before. When x is negative 1, half of negative 1 is negative 0.5, plus 2 is 1.5. When x is 0, half of 0 is 0, plus 2 is 2. And lastly, when x is 1, half of 1 is 0.5, plus 2 is 2.5. Plot the coordinates and connect using a straight line. Now we need to repeat the process for the second equation. Notice how this is not in the same format as the other ones that we've done. All of the others have been y equals another expression, which has made it easier to find out what the y value is. This one isn't in that format, but we can change it or rearrange it so that it is. To make y the subject, eliminate all of the terms that don't involve y. So we can subtract x from both sides. So we end up with 2y is equal to 12 minus x. And lastly, we can divide through by 2, so we're just left with y on the left hand side. So y is equal to 6 minus a half of x. Now we can repeat what we've done using this rearranged version instead. When x is negative 1, substitute this in. We'll have 6 take away half of negative 1. 6 take away half of negative 1 is negative 0.5. And we end up subtracting a negative which has the same impact as adding. So the first y value would be 6.5. Next, substitute in 0. Nice and easy. Anything multiplied by 0 will be 0. So 6 take away 0 is 6. And lastly, x is equal to 1. So 6 take away half of 1. 6 take away 0.5 is 5.5. Find the coordinates and then plot the coordinates. Once plotted, connect with a straight line and look for where the lines intersect, which is here. That's the coordinate 4, 4, meaning your x value is 4 and your y value is 4 for these simultaneous equations. Lastly, we have the advanced question, which is one of the trickiest types of questions that you can find on this topic. Notice how the equation they've given us is not a linear, it's a quadratic as it has an x squared term. They'll normally give you a table of values for this. If you have a calculator, that makes these questions a lot easier to do, as we can substitute -2 in for x, which appears twice, and the calculator will automatically work this out for you. Just make sure that every time you substitute a negative number, you always use brackets. So for this first value, it would be brackets -2 squared minus 4 lots of brackets -2, subtract 2. Inputting this into your calculator will give you the right answer straight away, and just swap these values for x, finding all of the corresponding y values. Without a calculator is a bit harder, as it's quite difficult to do all of that in your head with all of the negative values that you've got. So what I encourage you to do is to create a larger table, breaking it up into these 3 separate parts where we have x squared, minus 4x and minus 2. So we're just going to create 3 extra rows. So instead of going straight from x to y, we'll work out what x squared is, we'll work out what -4x is, and then we can just take away 2 from all of the values at the end. So starting off with x is -2, and just focus on x squared. So -2 times -2 is 4. And then we've got -4x, so -4 times -2 is +8. And lastly, we just need to remember to take away 2. Doing it like this will help you to focus on each bit independently and lead to less mistakes overall. Next we have -1. -1 squared is 1. -1 times -4 is 4. And take away 2. 0 squared, 0. -4 times 0 is 0. And then minus 2. 1 squared is 1. Timesing by -4 is -4, minus 2. 2 squared, 4. Timesing by -4 is -8, minus 2. 3 squared is 9. Times by -4 is -12, minus 2. And lastly, we have 4 squared, which is 16. Timesing by -4 is -16, minus 2. Now we can go through and add up each column to find out what the y value would be overall. So 4 plus 8 take away 2 is 10. 1 plus 4 is 5, take away 2 is 3. 0, 0 minus 2 would be -2. 1 take away 4 is -3, take away 2 is -5. 4 take away 8 is -4, take away 2 is -6. 9 take away 12, -3, take away 2, -5. And the last one, 16, take away 16 is 0, minus 2 is -2. Plot the coordinates. So the first one is -2, 10. I'm just going to go ahead and do the rest. Notice it doesn't produce a straight line. We have more of a curve. You won't be able to use a ruler for this. You'll have to do it freehand. Make sure you use a pencil and do one single line using a smooth curve. Now that we've drawn the graph of y equals x squared minus 4x minus 2, we can move on to part C. Use the graph to find estimates for the solutions of the one that we've just drawn, and they've also included another one here which looks like a linear. Similar to how we did before, we can do a little bit of rearranging on this to make it y equals 6 minus x. This will make it a little bit easier to find the corresponding y values. 6 take away -1 is 6 plus 1, which is 7. 6 take away 0 is 6. And for the last one, 6 take away 1 is 5. Plot the coordinates, connect with a straight line, look for the points of intersection. Notice this time there's actually 2 solutions. We have one here and one here. Also, note how they don't go through the corners of squares, so they're not whole numbers. This is why the question said find estimates, because we won't be able to identify the exact solution, but instead we can look at roughly where it is. So focusing on this one here at the top, the coordinate looks to be roughly -1.7 in the x direction and 7.7 in the y direction. So x is negative 1.7 and y is 7.7. And for the one down here on the right, it looks to be roughly 4.7, 1.3. X is equal to 4.7 and y is equal to 1.3. Because it's an estimate and it all depends on how accurate you drew your curve to start off with, there will be a range of an answer on the mark scheme which you can put down. As long as you followed the advice that I've given you, your answer should always lie within the range. The main thing is just making sure that you do that curve accurately with one single line. Before you go, have a little look at this solution that I've provided for a question similar to one of the ones we've looked at. I may have made some mistakes. Let's see if you can identify them and tell me what they are in the comments below. Thanks for watching. If you found that video useful, don't forget to hit the like button and leave a comment. If you're struggling with maths or finding topics difficult, you can subscribe and turn on notifications to receive regular updates about new video tutorials. Don't forget to visit my website adamonlinetutoring.com for a full searchable list of all topics with exams, questions and solutions. You can also visit me on social media using the handle @AdamMathsTutor on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook and Twitter. All links in the description below.